I learned a new phrase recently, semantic satiation. You have to sound a bit like Sean Connery when you say it. This literally means that words become less meaningful as a function of repetition. When I first heard the phrase trauma-informed, it felt meaningful. I first came across it after the 2012 Angelini report on women offenders. The report acknowledged the typical characteristics of women who become caught up in the criminal justice system. That is to say that many of them have experienced physical and sexual violence at the hands of men, with many of them displaying trauma-driven responses to the presence of any one male, such as hypervigilance. Politicians of all stripes fell over themselves to praise this report and acknowledge that something had to change. Successive justice secretaries couldn't stop talking about the need for trauma-informed practices. Michael Matheson, 2017. This new facility will be run using therapeutic community principles and will incorporate gender-specific and trauma-informed practice, addressing the particular needs of the female prison population. Humza Yousaf, Humza Yousaf, 2019. In line with the development of the new female custodial estate, SPS will adopt a more trauma-informed approach to its searching process for women. Keith Brown, 2022. By introducing a gender-specific and trauma-informed approach to managing and supporting women in custody, the new facility will help better prepare them for their reintegration back into their communities. The Scottish Prison Service developed a strategy for women in custody. Again, the word trauma featured heavily, 27 times in fact. And I quote, "The strategy is founded on the principle that all aspects of the care of women in custody should be designed for women and take account of their likely experience of trauma and adversities. The approach recognises the effects of trauma on women's lives and seeks to minimise further harm and distress." Core principle. The environment supports an approach to custody will take account of women's likely experience of trauma and the potential for re-traumatisation, and will be designed to minimise the harmful effects of custody and maximise opportunities for growth and well-being. And just 6 months ago, the Women's Justice Leadership Panel, convened by the Scottish Government, issued a report entitled "The Case for Gendered and Intersectional Approaches to Justice." It contained no less than 64 references to trauma. As you can see, linguistic inflation has set in. And yet, for the last decade, the Scottish Prison Service has had in place a policy which is based on the presumption that any male prisoner who says he is a woman should be considered for a move to the female estate. The new revamped policy is, if anything else, worse. Trans-identified male prisoners who have only committed violence against men can be considered for a move to the female estate. Touchingly, it seems that SPS managers believe in the chivalry principle. And we are told that no male prisoner with a history of violence against women will be considered. Although given that most violence against women is never reported, let alone prosecuted or convicted, this appears to be policy making by means of a crystal ball. But most chillingly, the policy states that male prisoners who have histories of violence against women can be considered for a move to the female estate if, and I quote, "there is compelling evidence that they do not present an unacceptable risk of harm to those in women's prisons." So there we have it. The Scottish Prison Service, endorsed by the Scottish Government, believe that there is in fact an acceptable risk of harm that can be borne by female prisoners. So much for trauma-informed. So much for women's physical safety, their dignity, their privacy, and their psychological safety. None of that counts, it seems. So in the end, the much vaunted phrase, trauma-informed, was just words. Words you say when you're giving a soundbite to the media. Words you say when you're giving evidence to MSPs in Parliament. Words you write down on a page and forget about. But now we know, and let's not let the people in the building over there forget.
Thank you, Lisa.